What would you do if you discovered that an entire American town, with 247 residents, a post office and a main street, was completely wiped from existence overnight? Not abandoned. Not destroyed by natural disaster. Erased. As if it never existed. In 1944, the village of Millhaven, West Virginia, vanished from every map, every census record, every government document. For 79 years, the official response was simple: no such place ever existed. But declassified military files tell a different story. A story of midnight evacuations, experimental weapons, and something the Army called Project Silent Valley. What you're about to hear was buried in the Pentagon's classified archives for 8 decades. The witnesses were sworn to secrecy. The records were marked for permanent destruction. The families of Millhaven were given new identities and relocated across the country with strict instructions never to speak of their former home. But files have a way of surviving. And the truth has a way of surfacing. This investigation will challenge everything you think you know about what our government is capable of hiding. By the end, you'll understand why Millhaven had to disappear, and why it might have been the right decision. Subscribe now, because what we've uncovered might be the most disturbing government cover-up in American history. Chapter 1. The Last Night. Millhaven sat in a forgotten valley of the Appalachian Mountains, accessible only by a single dirt road that wound through dense forest for 12 miles. The village had existed since 1889, built around a small coal mine that played out by 1920. By 1944, it was home to 247 people who lived simple lives, farming, hunting, and maintaining the kind of tight-knit community that modern America has forgotten. The village consisted of 43 homes, a general store, a one-room schoolhouse, and a small church where Reverend Thomas Clayton delivered sermons every Sunday to a congregation that included nearly every resident. Main Street was barely wide enough for 2 cars to pass. Children played in Miller's Creek while their parents worked small gardens and tended livestock. But in the weeks leading up to October 13, 1944, something changed in Millhaven. Sarah Brennan, then 16 years old, would later tell military investigators about the dogs. Every dog in the village started acting strange around September 20th, she said in a sworn statement. They wouldn't go near the eastern woods. They'd whine and pace, and at night they'd all howl together like they were afraid of something. The eastern woods bordered Millhaven for 2 miles, dense forest that locals had hunted and hiked for decades. But suddenly, experienced hunters like Jim Morrison and Pete Caldwell returned from the woods with stories that made no sense. Game trails that led nowhere. Compass needles spinning wildly. Areas of complete silence where no birds sang and no insects buzzed. Temperature readings from the Millhaven weather station, maintained by retired teacher Eleanor Walsh, show an unexplained phenomenon. Starting October 1st, the eastern section of the village registered temperatures consistently 15 degrees colder than the western section. It was like standing next to an open freezer, Walsh wrote in her final log entry. The cold came from underground. On October 10th, 3 days before the disappearance, Millhaven lost all telephone communication. The single phone line connecting the village to the outside world went dead. When repair crews arrived from Charleston, they found the lines intact but carrying no signal. They left confused, reporting equipment failure they couldn't explain. The last documented entry in any Millhaven record comes from Reverend Clayton's journal, dated October 12, 1944. The children won't play outside anymore. Mrs. Henderson says the ground beneath her house vibrates at night. I've decided to cancel Sunday service. Something is terribly wrong here. God help us. 18 hours later, Millhaven ceased to exist. Chapter 2. Erased by Force. At 4:47 a.m. on October 13, 1944, a convoy of military vehicles surrounded Millhaven. Army trucks, personnel carriers, and what witnesses described as unmarked black cars blocked the single road leading out of the valley. By sunrise, every resident had been forcibly evacuated. According to classified Army documents obtained through a 2023 Freedom of Information Act request, the operation was designated Emergency Relocation Protocol 7. The commanding officer was Colonel William Thorne, whose service record shows no other operations of this type before or after Millhaven. Resident testimonies, buried in military files for 79 years, reveal the terror of that morning. Soldiers came to every door, recalled Martha Phillips, who was 22 at the time. They said we had 15 minutes to pack one bag each. When I asked why, the sergeant said there had been a chemical spill and the area was contaminated. But there were no chemical plants within 50 miles of Millhaven. The evacuation was swift and methodical. Families were separated and loaded into different vehicles. Children were taken from parents with promises they would be reunited at processing centers. Many never saw each other again. By noon, Millhaven was empty. But the military operation was just beginning. Over the next 72 hours, Army Corps of Engineers demolished every structure in the village. Houses, the school, the church, the general store, all reduced to rubble and hauled away. The cemetery was excavated and all remains relocated to unmarked graves in 3 different states. Simultaneously, cartographers were ordered to remove Millhaven from all maps. Census records were altered. Post office documentation was destroyed. The village's zip code was officially never assigned. Phone company records showing the discontinued line were expunged. Most disturbing were the witness silencing protocols. Evacuated residents were held at undisclosed facilities for weeks of debriefing. They were forced to sign documents declaring they had never lived in Millhaven and swearing never to discuss their relocation. Those who refused were kept in detention longer. 2 residents who continued to resist, Farmer Daniel Beck and teacher Eleanor Walsh, were declared mentally unstable and committed to psychiatric facilities where they remained until their deaths. The operation's scope extended beyond residents. 3 Charleston newspaper reporters who had investigated the evacuation died in separate accidents within 6 months. A Forest Service ranger who had documented unusual readings in the area was transferred to Alaska and died in a plane crash in 1947. By 1945, no evidence remained that Millhaven had ever existed, except in classified files marked for permanent destruction in 2019. Chapter 3: The File That Resurfaced. Dr. Rebecca Chin, a geological researcher at West Virginia University, discovered the Millhaven files by accident in March 2023. While researching seismic activity in Appalachian coal mining regions, she requested decades of government geological surveys. Among thousands of routine documents was a misfiled folder labeled Silent Valley Geological Assessment Classification Level, Secret. The folder contained 97 pages of documentation that should not have existed. The centerpiece was a hand-drawn military map dated October 15, 1944, showing the exact location of Millhaven, coordinates that now mark empty forest. Attached were soil analysis reports, photographs, and testimony transcripts from what the documents called Operation Silent Valley Containment. The photographs were the most disturbing evidence. Black and white images showed the village during evacuation, but also something else. Areas of ground that appeared to be moving. Soil that seemed to writhe and shift. In one photo, a perfect circle of dead earth surrounded what had been the village center, as if something beneath had killed everything above. The soil reports defied explanation. Samples taken from beneath Millhaven showed mineral compositions that didn't match any known geological formations. Temperature readings indicated heat sources 200 feet underground reaching 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Impossible in that region. Most puzzling were references to biological contamination and organic matter of unknown origin. But it was the witness testimonies that revealed why Millhaven had to disappear. Sergeant Michael Torres, part of the demolition team, testified, on October 14, while clearing the church foundation, the ground split open. The crack was maybe 6 feet long and 2 feet wide. The smell that came out, it wasn't natural. Sweet and rotten at the same time. Then we heard sounds from down there. Not animal sounds. Not human either. Private David Walsh, no relation to teacher Eleanor Walsh, described the final night of demolition. The ground was moving under our feet. Like something massive was trying to push up from below. The colonel ordered us to pour concrete into every crack and seal everything. Then he called in engineers to bury the whole site under 20 feet of dirt and rocks. The most chilling testimony came from Colonel Thorne himself, given under oath in a closed military tribunal. Whatever was under Millhaven was growing. Our geologists estimated it had been dormant for decades, possibly centuries. The October seismic activity woke it up. Evacuation wasn't about protecting civilians from it, it was about protecting the world from what it might become if it reached the surface. The final document in the folder was a single-page memo from the Secretary of War to President Roosevelt, dated October 20, 1944. Millhaven contained. Recommend permanent burial of all evidence. Nature of threat too dangerous for public knowledge. Site to remain under military surveillance indefinitely. Chapter 4. Return to the Forbidden Place. Dr. Chen's first attempt to locate the former site of Millhaven failed. GPS coordinates from the military map led to dense forest with no signs of human habitation. But aerial photography revealed what ground-level investigation missed. Perfectly straight line of dead trees stretching for nearly half a mile, as if something underground continued to affect vegetation above. On September 15, 2023, Dr. Chen returned with a team of graduate students and ground-penetrating radar equipment. What they found confirmed the military files were authentic. 20 feet below the forest floor, the radar detected a massive concrete structure, the sealed remains of Millhaven. The concrete formed a perfect circle 2,000 feet in diameter and extended at least 50 feet deep. At the center was a void space the size of a football field. More disturbing was what the equipment detected below the concrete: movement. The readings didn't make sense, recalled graduate student Mark Sullivan. The radar showed something large shifting around beneath the seal. Not geological movement, something organic. Dr. Chen ordered us to pack up immediately. As the team prepared to leave, they discovered they were not alone in the forest. Hidden among the trees were military surveillance cameras, modern equipment that had clearly been recently installed. Motion sensors. Electronic monitoring devices. Someone was still watching the site. That night, camping 5 miles from the former village location, the team experienced phenomena that matched 1944 witness descriptions. Temperature drops of 20 degrees in localized areas. Compass needles spinning erratically. Electronic equipment malfunctioning. And beneath their feet, a subtle vibration that lasted from midnight until dawn. Dr. Chen's final log entry from the expedition reads, "Whatever they buried under Millhaven is still there. Still active. The military didn't just erase a village, they created a prison. And something inside that prison is trying to get out." 2 weeks after returning from the site, Dr. Chen was approached by federal agents who confiscated all her research materials and required her to sign a national security non-disclosure agreement. Her students were debriefed individually and sworn to secrecy. The official West Virginia University report on the expedition states simply, "No significant geological findings. Site unsuitable for further research." But Dr. Chen had already made copies of everything. Epilogue, the final entry. 3 months after Dr. Chen's expedition, a package arrived at her university office with no return address. Inside was a cassette tape labeled, "For the Geological Researcher," from a friend of Eleanor Walsh. The tape contained a recording made by Eleanor Walsh, Millhaven's teacher, on October 12, 1944, her final night in the village. Hidden in her personal effects for 79 years, the tape had been preserved by her niece, who had recently died and left instructions for its delivery. Eleanor Walsh's voice, crackling through decades-old recording equipment, revealed the truth that the military files had concealed. It started with the children. They began drawing the same thing in art class, circles within circles going down deep into the earth. When I asked them what it was, they said it was the hungry place that's waking up. The Morrison boy said it had been sleeping since before the Indians came, but the mining had disturbed its rest. Now it was getting ready to feed. I thought they were just frightened by the strange sounds and the cold. But today I saw it myself. Behind the church, the ground opened up just wide enough for me to peer inside. There's something down there. Something vast and alive and hungry. I could hear it breathing. It knows we're here. It's been calling to the children, trying to get them to come closer. If anyone ever finds this recording, you need to understand, Millhaven didn't disappear because of an experiment or an accident. It disappeared because something woke up beneath us. Something that had been waiting. The government saved us by taking us away, but they couldn't kill it. They could only bury it deeper and hope it goes back to sleep. But I don't think it will. I think it's just getting started. The recording ends with the sound of Eleanor Walsh's door being kicked in and soldiers ordering her outside. Dr. Chen's research suggests that similar geological anomalies exist at 17 other locations across Appalachia, all sites of abandoned mining operations, all now owned by the federal government and closed to public access. The question isn't whether the government was right to erase Millhaven from history. The question is, how many other villages are they still watching? Subscribe for more classified investigations. And if you live near abandoned mining country, pay attention to what's happening beneath your feet. Some things are better left buried, but they don't always stay that way.